Brhad Bhagavatamrita, Part 2, Chapter 5. And we're with Gopal Kumar in Dwarka. Uddhava knew the Lord's ecstasies very well, so he ate some of Krishna's Mahaprasad remnants and then took me somewhat by force to his own house. Commentary. Krishna was thinking that Gopakumar would not feel completely at ease in a palace filled with royal opulence. Therefore, he decided that it would be better for Gopakumar to stay with Uddhava at his house, since Uddhava has had a unique affinity with the residents of Vraja. Uddhava knew what the Lord was thinking without the Lord having to say anything. So, as soon as Uddhava ate some of Krishna's remnants, he took Gopakumar with him without so much as a word. Since Gopakumar was still dazed, Uddhava had to drag him away. 32. Only then did I completely return to normal consciousness. Reflecting on what had just happened, I danced for a long time and then began to think. Commentary. In the more normal situation of Uddhava's house, Gopakumar was able to gather his thoughts. He was delighted to have the opportunity to be with Krishna and his devotees there in Dwarka. 33. I said to myself, indeed, today I've achieved the ultimate perfection of all my desires, for with my very eyes I have seen the hero of Vraja, with all his attractive charms, that same person upon whom I have always meditated in my heart. Commentary. This is the form of the absolute truth that for so long has filled Gopakumar's heart in his meditations, the audacious enjoyer of Vrajabhumi who attracts his devotees in countless ways. 33. The next day, I went with Uddhava and saw my Lord. But I was so beside myself with delight that I was unable to do more than that. Commentary on this second day, Gopakumar was still so disoriented by ecstasy of the new state of affairs that he was unable to render any service other than taking darshan of Krishna. 35-36. While residing there in Dwarka, I constantly, abundantly received Lord Krishna's wonderful mercy. I tasted such a flood of supreme ecstasy that no one could tell of it in words or even think of it within the mind. Not even a pure devotee of the Lord with a lifetime of Brahma. Commentary. The glories of Krishna and Dwarka are surely beyond the comprehension of the greatest scholars and mystic yogis. Only rarely can even surrendered devotees approach those glories with the mind or words. 37. The happiness found in liberation is said to be supreme, multiplied many millions of times, and might be said to be equal to the joy of Vaikuntha. And if any joy still greater can be conceived, It is that which is found in Ayodhya. But the joy born in Dwaraka, how can anyone even begin to describe it? Commentaries, 2 paragraphs. The devotees of impersonal liberation consider the nullifying of material existence the highest possible perfection. Its happiness greater than any other. They are unaware of the existence of a transcendental world in which there is a happiness much greater. Although the Vaishnavas openly proclaim that happiness to anyone willing to hear, among the Vaishnavas, those with especially fine powers of discrimination know and describe an even greater happiness which is found in Lord Ramachandra's kingdom of Ayodhya. But one's power of logic can surmise the super excellent degree of happiness relished by Krishna and his companion, but no one's power, there we go, but no one's power of logic can surmise the super excellent degree of happiness relished by Krishna and his companions in Dwaraka. Paragraph. Powerful thinkers have studied the Vedas and pondered the supreme happiness of liberation, but thinkers with still finer intelligence recognize that the happiness of impersonal liberation is nothing but the absence of material misery, and so there must be something greater, namely the happiness of Vaikuntha. They presume, moreover, that the ultimate limit of happiness lies in Vaikuntha, because otherwise they would face the logical flaw of an endless regress of different degrees of happiness. Be that as it may, in the spiritual abode of Ayodhya, the Supreme Lord's servants have such exclusive devotion for him and such determination to satisfy him with their service that the happiness there is palpably greater than that of Vaikuntha. Even better, however, is the happiness of Dwaraka. No speculator can find a methodology to analyze it, but it exists nonetheless. It is not a mere creation of devotees' sentiments, for many reliable authorities have perceived it for themselves. 38. Indeed, no faculty of mind or speech can grasp the joy of a resident of Dwarka, the joy a resident of Dwarka feels from having gained the only Lord of his life after a long time yearning to see him. Only those minds are fit to know that joy. Commentary. Persons with strong intelligence but weak faith in devotional service to Krishna may doubt whether happiness greater than found in Ayodhya can exist. But although such doubters may be unable to know the happiness of Dwaraka, what right do they have to declare it non-existent? There are other, more qualified persons who know the taste of it, even though words and the mind can hardly comprehend the transcendental bliss known by the Dwarakavasis. It has been described with logical supporting arguments for the benefit of Krishna's aspiring worshippers to fortify their enthusiasm for unalloyed devotional service. Just as the devotees of Ayodhya taste greater happiness in their intimate mood of service than the Narayana Bhaktas of Vaikuntha, the devotees of Dwaraka enjoy happiness still greater because they are personally connected to Krishna in the mood of friendship. And when we extend this thinking a step further, we can understand that the happiness of Goloka, resting as it does on the topmost prema known only there, is greater still, and no happiness is greater. 39. After I had lived for some time there in Dwarka, some of the best of the divine Yadavas said something to me. Their hearts melted with eagerness to see everyone in the world happy within and without. They're going to tell him to change his clothes. Doesn't fit the Vaikuntha mood. Get with it, kid. Commentary. What Gopakumar is speaking to his disciple is not merely theoretical. While residing in Dwarka, Gopakumar had tasted enough of Dwarka's unique happiness to rightly claim knowledge of it. On one occasion during his stay, he had been approached by some concerned residents who only wanted the greatest possible happiness for everyone, both externally in the form of good food, clothing, ornaments, and other means for enjoyment, and internally in the form of the priceless treasure of prema and its ecstasies. 40. The divine Yadavas said, Dear friend, you have come to this place, which is more full in supreme splendor than even Vaikuntha, and you are now our companion. We think it is hardly fitting that you continue to dress like a miserable forest dweller. Commentary. Of course, Gopakumar was beyond material misery, as the Yadavas expressed by speaking of him as Sudina Vat, as if miserable, not actually miserable. Still, they felt that Gopakumar's incongruous dress and behavior were depriving him of many of the joys of a resident of Dwarka. 41. This troubles our minds. So, please take on our type of dress and looks, which are naturally available to anyone who lives here. Commentary. The citizens of Dwarka know only the highest constant ecstasy, but these devotees felt a little unhappy to see Gopakumar in an apparently wretched condition. By nature, they were intolerant of even an outward semblance of misery. Gopakumar should not worry where to get the right dress and capabilities for enjoying like a Dwarkavasi, because the very atmosphere of Dwarka readily provides these to any resident who wants them. 42. Sri Gopakumar said, even though these Yadavas insisted, I stayed like a poor simple devotee because in their dress I would not have been able to taste the special mood that appealed to my mind and to Lord Achyuta's. Commentary. Gopakumar preferred to stay inferior to these prominent Yadavas. To him, more important than keeping up appearances was protecting his personal rasa with Krishna. 43. I then became shy and feared to go near the personality of Godhead when he was seated in his court and being served by his transcendental opulences. Commentary. To maintain his unbroken inner mood of service, Gopakumar declined to follow the Yadava's suggestion that he change his dress, but this further disturbed his heart. Now that the matter had been brought to his attention, he began to feel uncomfortable about appearing before Lord Krishna in the assembly hall, He thought that his own appearance He thought his own appearance incongruent and was apprehensive that he might do something wrong. Not only was he embarrassed, he was also daunted by the great opulence he saw in the Sudharma hall and the huge crowds of kings, sages, and demigods. His uneasiness at coming before Krishna while the Lord was seated on his throne in the royal court made Gopakumar begin thinking again about going somewhere else. 44. Sometimes I would see the Lord with four hands. I couldn't always see the special pastimes he performs in Brajabhumi. Commentary. When devotees like Sri Rukmini were present, Gopakumar found it difficult to vision Krishna as he is in his Vrindavan pastimes. When the Lord was talking with Narada Muni or Arjuna, Gopakumar could hardly see him tending his cows. Sometimes Gopakumar could see him as if in Vrindavan, but not often enough. 45. Sometimes the Lord would go alone to visit his dear friends, the Pandavas, who stayed nearby. Commentary. On earth, the Pandavas lived a good distance away from Dwarka in Hastinapur, so Krishna had made a long journey to meet them. In Vaikuntha, however, the situation is different. Even if the residence of the Pandavas is physically distant from Dwarkapuri, in the spiritual realm, there are no limitations of time and space. By the power of the Lord's desire, any place to which he wishes to travel is at once nearby. 46. And so, because of desires long held but unfulfilled, my heart would feel tormented. But when I could see his beauty and qualities once again, my heart would again become peaceful. Commentary. Being unable for even a short time to see Krishna's beauty and his kind behavior would throw Gopakumar into anxious turmoil. But as soon as Krishna would return, Gopakumar would recover his composure. 47. His nectarian words revealed his mercy. How can my tongue even touch the unique happiness they created? 48. During the several days I spent this way in the house of Uddhava, if there were any unhappiness, I would conceal it by feigning happiness. Commentary. I'm anticipating there's going to be a long discussion with Uddhava and Narada in Uddhava's home coming up. Commentary. Besides Krishna's occasional absence from Dwaraka, another cause of anxiety for Gopakumar was the tendency to remember the land of his birth. Although being unable to see his worshipable Lord playing in the pastimes of Braja made Gopakumar unhappy, he tried hard to conceal this because he knew that the Dwarkavasis couldn't tolerate seeing anyone in pain, and also because he was reluctant to make a show of his private ecstasies. 49. One day, I saw Narada come. I bowed down to him, and in utter joy and amazement, I spoke to him in the following way. Commentary. To help Gopakumar achieve his long-cherished goal, Narada appeared at just the right moment to tell him about the glories of Sri Goloka and how to achieve Goloka. Text 50. O Narada, best of the Lord's associates, in the guise of an exalted sage, I see you just everywhere. in the heavenly planets, in Vaikuntha, and now here, looking just the same. How fascinated I am to see this. Commentary. Inspired by the joy of seeing Narada Muni, Gopakumar wants to hear more about the sage's glories from his own mouth and hear further details about the special powers of the Supreme Lord's associates in Vaikuntha, powers Narada has briefly mentioned before. This is Brhad Bhagavatamrita, chapter 4, the previous chapter, verses 161 through 162. Quote, thus, although Krishna, his associates, and his abode are seen in various forms in different places, and in dreams and other special states of consciousness, they are with perfect consistency. One, although many, they are always real. Paragraph. Narada dresses in saffron like a lifelong brahmachari, but the true extent of his glories goes far beyond strict celibacy. In the words of Gopakumar, Narada is the best of the Supreme Lord's intimate associates. Gopakumar is amazed that he meets Narada almost everywhere and sees him always the same, with the same veena in his hand and the same unabashed humor. But as Gopakumar has already heard from Narada, even when Narada expands himself to be present in many different locations, he is still one and the same person. This was discussed earlier. Now he's going to say it again. That's what he says here, 51. Narada said, my dear young cowherd, you've always been a curious boy, and so you are even now. Haven't I explained this all to you before? The answer is yes. Commentary. Like Narada, Gopakumar has his own peculiar way he dresses and acts like a cowherd boy, regardless of where he is. Moreover, it seems curious to Narada that Gopakumar still doubts the ability and power of devotees of the Lord to expand themselves into multiple forms, especially since Narada has explained this truth scientifically and Gopakumar has seen tangible evidence of it with his own eyes. Gopakumar may insist that he is honestly confused and not simply trying to make some game of expressing doubt. But Narada reasserts that Gopakumar, however briefly, has already heard him elucidate the subject. 52. Just as the one personality Godhead, Sri Krishna, exists in many forms and many places, so do we, his servants. So it is with all of us, Sri Garuda and other attendants, devotees like Sri Hanuman and our friend Uddhava, and others too, like these Yadavas. Commentary. Devotees like Garuda and Shesha are associates of the Lord of Vaikuntha, whereas Hanuman, Jambavan, and others are servants of Lord Ramachandra. Hanuman sings the glories of Lord Ram in the Kimpurusha Loka of the Bhu Loka region, and simultaneously in the Ayodhya of Vaikuntha. And Uddhava, whom Gopakumar can see right before him, is simultaneously one of the principal companions of Krishna in Dwaraka on earth, along with the Yadavas, Pandavas, and others. Considering the topic too confidential to bring up just now, which means he's going to cover it again, Narada chooses not to mention Krishna's devotees in Sri Goloka. Text 54. All the Lord's personal associates are at his hand like playthings. They are always fully dedicated to his service. Each assumes a variety of forms, yet stays essentially one, just like the Lord himself. Commentary. As Sri Krishna Chandra, the original personality, original supreme person, expands himself into innumerable forms of Godhead when required for service to the Lord, his eternal associates can also expand themselves into many forms, perpetually dedicated to worshiping him. They are willing instruments in the enactment of his pleasure pastimes. Whatever gives the Lord happiness is also their satisfaction. So when he expands himself and his abode into all sorts of forms, they accompany him in suitably corresponding forms. Gopakumar should therefore not be amazed that Nard appears in so many places at once for the service of the Lord. Text 55. The Lord names his pastimes and his favorite abodes, and everything that has to do with his service can assume various forms. And you should know that just as all these are eternally real, each of them is simultaneously one and many. Anekani, anekani, ekani, anekani, one and many. Commentary. While still on the topic of multiple expansions, Narada takes the opportunity to mention that the personality God had pastimes, his dear abodes such as Sri Mathura, and his paraphernalia like the Kastuba gem and the Sudarshana weapons display the same power of expansion. Here the word bhumi refers not only to the earth, but to any location, and so indicates other spiritual realms, such as Vaikuntha. The Supreme Lord's personal property, his names, his pastimes, and the places of his appearance are all by nature pure Satchidananda, just as he is. 56. What amazes me is that you still appear like this, playfully showing your same character as before. And even here, you seem always discontent and distressed at heart. That is most astonishing to me. Commentary. Gopakumar is too spiritually potent, so he also should be able to assume different forms in different places. Instead, however, he always remains the same innocent cowherd boy. Even in Vaikuntha and Dwarka, Narada thinks that Gopakumar is simply playing a game, pretending to be ignorant, even though he knows the reality. This is very surprising to Narada. And even more surprising is that everywhere they have met, Narada has seen in Gopakumar a persistent dissatisfaction, shown by his downturned face and distracted glance. 57. Sri Gopakumar said, taking hold of Narada's feet, I bowed down and humbly told him, My Lord, you know everything about this. Then Narada smiled and spoke, looking at Uddhava's face. Commentary. Gopakumar was most grateful that Narada fully understood the cause and scope of his mind's discontent, since Gopakumar honestly recognized his own inferior, dependent position. He bowed down and touched Narada's feet. Narada was happy to see this because it meant that Gopakumar was approaching perfection. So he smiled at Gopakumar's eagerness to receive the most confidential truth and turned to Uddhava, who would properly reveal it. So beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Sanatana Goswami. 58, 59. Sri Narada said, just see, Uddhava. This cowherd son, born at Govardhan, is seeking something unachievable for persons like you and me. Greatly agitated, he wanders here and there, never, anywhere, transcending the painful distress that is fixed in his heart. Commentary. Seeker, the son of a cowherd, has wandered all over the material and spiritual world, his heart filled with indescribable pain, and now he has taken shelter in Uddhava's house. He has not been able to find peace because his desired goal is beyond the reach of even great Vaishnavas like Narada and Uddhava. Why Gopakumar has such an unlikely ambition, Narada explains with the phrase Govardhano Bhava, born at Govardhan. Really nice. Text 60. Indeed, Uddhava, you are always anxious to favor the residents of Braja. Then why not spend a moment to enlighten this boy who is present right beside you? 61. The abode of Goloka is very far away, and the happiness relished there is inaccessible to us. And even the means to achieve that abode is so rarely obtained that we can only pray for it. Commentary. Although time and space do not exist in the spiritual realm, Goloka is still considered far away in the sense that the common residents of Vaikuntha cannot approach it, nor can they enjoy the pleasure of seeing Sri Nandana and taking part in his childhood play. Even the intimate companions of Lord Narayana worship the good fortune of the devotees in Goloka, a place they can approach only in prayer. 62. Sriman Uddhava said, he was born in Brajabhumi, and there he was engaged as a cowherd, and he is firmly established in the worship of Lord Gopal. He is surely a much greater soul than you and I. Commentary. Narada has just told Uddhava that Sri Goloka is a place that he and Uddhava can hardly approach. This statement somewhat disturbed Uddhava because he disliked the implication that he himself was better than everyone else in Vaikuntha. Still, he wanted to please Narada by enlightening Gopakumar as requested. So he first gave his opinion that Gopakumar was the most spiritually advanced person present, not himself or even Narada. After all, Gopakumar was a native of Govardhan, a lifelong tender of the cows in the holy Dham, and a worshipper of Sri Madan Gopal and his 10-syllable mantra. Moreover, wherever Gopakumar went, he remained dissatisfied because he couldn't find his worshipable Lord. 63. Narada was delighted to hear this. He embraced Uddhava and enthusiastically told him, please hurry and instruct him so that he may fulfill his desires. Uddhava replied, 64. Oh, great sage, since I'm a Kshatriya by birth, in your presence I have no right to instruct him. Commentary. Uddhava considers himself second class by birth and character. Nonetheless, he might be reminded that Kshatriyas are also allowed to teach. According to the Dharma Shastras, Kshatriyas may engage in the same duties prescribed for Brahmanas, except for receiving charity. This is confirmed in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, quote, for a Brahmana there are 6 occupational duties. A Kshatriya should not accept charity, but he may perform the other 5. Though not denying this authoritative statement, Uddhava is still reluctant to speak in the presence of Narada, the Adi Guru, for the process of devotional service. 65. Narada laughed very loudly and said to Uddhava, "Even here in Vaikuntha, you can't stop thinking yourself a Kshatriya." Commentary. In the material world, particularly within Bharatvarsha, the distinctions of caste and occupation are prevalent. But in Vaikuntha, these distinctions should not be considered because everyone there has a pure spiritual body. The positions of Brahmana, Kshatriya, and so on are designations of bodies that are limited and temporary. But Vaikuntha bodies are never subject to the limits imposed by material nature. 66. Smiling, Uddhava told him, "What can I say? How can someone like me stop thinking himself a Kshatriya when even our Lord does not?" 67. Here in Vaikuntha, the Lord maintains the religious principles of civilized people, just as he does on earth. He behaves like a proper family man, conquers his enemies, shows respect to elders and brahmanas, and so on. Commentary. In Dwarka, both on earth and in Vaikuntha, Sri Krishnadev thinks and acts like a proper householder and Kshatriya. He dutifully does everything expected of a responsible householder, goes forth with relish into battle to subdue opposing kings, and sincerely honors the Brahmanas and his spiritual masters, and his elders like Balaram. The word Adi, or and so on, implies that other daily duties he performs as a Grahastha Kshatriya, such as rising during the early hours of the Brahma Muhurta. 68. These words filled Narada's mind with pleasure, and he laughed, jumped up and down, and shouted in joy. Astonished, he spoke as follows. Sri Narada said, "Indeed, just see the charm and glory of the personality of Godhead's pastimes, and see in those pastimes how seriously committed his devotees are to serving him, and him alone. Oh, how very curious that this Lord plays in the highest abode, above Vaikuntha, the same way as in the material world of mortals, just to satisfy his dear devotees." Even 71. Even experienced devotees like me are bewildered to see such pastimes, which makes us wonder whether we are in Dwarka of Vaikuntha or the Dwarka of the material world. 72. It is quite fitting that you, devotees, care only for prema bhakti, pure loving devotional service to the Lord's lotus feet. Such prema bhakti for the Lord, who is very affectionate to his devotees, fulfills all their ambitions and is alone their final goal. Commentary. If Krishna deals virtually the same way with his devotees in both the spiritual and material worlds, what is special then about Vaikuntha? Narada answers that it is the quality of the relationships between the Lord and his devotees. In the quality of relationships between the Lord and his devotees, there is no practical difference between the material and spiritual worlds. In either realm, the Lord and the devotees achieve the fulfillment of all their desires. So, whatever they do is just apt for the time and place in which they happen to be. For devotees, nothing is as important as the opportunity to always serve his lotus feet in pure love. And otherwise, for the personality Godhead, nothing is as important as satisfying his devotees. Paragraph. Since nouns in Sanskrit may be either singular, dual, or plural, and since the word bhavatam or bayu is plural, here the word indicates that Narada is speaking not only to Uddhava and Gopakumar, but to all the fully devoted servants of the Lord. 73. You have no great interest in acting as residents of Vaikuntha or sojourners in the material world, and he has no great interest in showing his opulence or getting involved in mundane relationships. Last verse, because we have a schedule. Commentary. Because the Supreme Lord and his pure devotees are interested only in pleasing one another, it makes little difference to them where they happen to be. Devotees may be in Vaikuntha, endowed with Satchitananda spiritual bodies, and the corresponding powers and comforts to enjoy. Or they may be grahastas or whatever in the material world with bodies made of the physical elements and may worship the Lord in a form of his that also seems material. But in any case, the Lord and his devotees are never distracted from their pure loving exchanges of rasas, not even when the Lord fully expands his opulences or his complete self-satisfaction or seems to establish worldly affinities by becoming a father, a son, or some other relative of his devotees. Since the devotees are exclusively devoted to the Lord, their hearts are satisfied simply by relishing his pastimes and transcendental qualities. Similarly, the Lord is interested only in making his devotees happy. These ambitions of the Lord and his devotees can be fully fulfilled equally well in Vaikuntha or in the material world. So for them, there is no substantial difference between the two realms. That's it for this morning. Uddhava is going to dazzle us shortly. It's going to be very, very attractive, besides the philosophical foundation. Krishna's pastimes in Gokula are going to be awesome. Guaranteed. Prabhupada ki jai.